Okay, Alexander, let's talk about what is going on in China. We have had the Communist Party of China wrap up their Congress. Xi Jinping, this is his third term, I believe. And then we have the controversy of Hu Jintao, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, being, well, some some media outlets say he was dragged out of the Congress because he doesn't quite get along with Xi Jinping. Other accounts, including your own, your analysis says that this is just a man who's old and frail and ill, and he was escorted out. No bad blood between anybody. He was escorted out because of his health condition. That has kind of actually dominated the discourse around the event, oddly enough. So, what's your take on things?
Yeah, I mean, on the Hu Jintao thing, I think it's sucking up far too much attention because it's important to stress Hu Jintao doesn't have any power in China today. I mean, this is he was leader. He was China's leader before Xi Jinping. He was the general secretary of the Chinese Communist Party. He was the president of the country. But it's quite clear that he's been marginalized for a long, long time. And he was there sitting next to Xi Jinping. He didn't look well at all to me. I have to say, and I get to say this, he looked to me like someone in the early stages of dementia, not fully aware of what was going on, rather vacant. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm just speculating now. Maybe I shouldn't. But the point is, it didn't look to me like a political incident. I don't want to waste time on this because, frankly, I think that this is taking up far more attention than it merits. The key takeaway I got from this Congress is that the leadership in China has now fully consolidated around Xi Jinping. He is clearly, absolutely the dominant figure in China today. And that one of the reasons for that consolidation is that the Chinese leadership is now convinced that there's going to be a smash with the United States. If you trawl through this interminable report, it's difficult to read. It's full of, ideological language, not always easy to understand, I find. But if you trawl through it, it's clear, at least to me, that the Chinese feel that they're under very intense pressure from the neocons in Washington, who control the US government, that a clash is coming, a big clash is coming. They're battening down the hatches. They've consolidated around their leader. They're going to reinforce their military position, and they're preparing for a war over Taiwan. Now, up to very recently, the Chinese were always saying, we were seeking peaceful reunification with Taiwan. Now they're saying peaceful reunification, but we're prepared to go to war. And it's now an official position. It's entering the official documents of the Congress, of the party, and it's also what Xi Jinping himself says. So I think this is the real takeaway from this Congress. I've been reading about, in the Financial Times about how it was statist and belligerent. I think that this is to misunderstand it. I thought personally that it was defensive in the sense that they are thinking now that they're heading for a smash with the United States. They're taking steps to tighten controls in China because of that, including tightening economic controls, that they understand that, the situation where they were able to trade freely with every country that they wanted, including, of course, the US, is ending. So they're now in the business of forging alliances. They weren't doing that before. And of course, they're now refocusing increasingly on building up their military because they can see that a conflict with the United States is coming. and that they're working towards that. So that was my major takeaway of this, over this. And I said, I think wasting time when an old man is shuffled out of the hall when these big events are taking place is to some extent a misdirection.
Well, that's what the collective West
Yeah.
mainstream media is good at, is misdirection. That's what they're best at. But the smash
Yeah.
was coming. Well, we called it a divorce when Trump was
Yes.
president. We said that China and the U.S. are heading for divorce, and it looks like the Trump White House is trying to make that divorce as smooth as possible, as is China. But they're heading for a divorce, but they're trying to make it as smooth as can be. When the Biden White House came in, things changed, and we did a video where we talked about the sanctions that the Biden White House started to place on China. And you used the term the sanctions escalator. And the Biden White House has now put China on the US sanctions escalator. And this is an escalator that goes one way. There's not an escalator that when you get to the top, you can come back down. Once you're on the first step, the sanctions just start to pile up and up and on and on. And you reach the point of Iran or Syria or, God forbid, Russia. When you get to the top of that escalator. And we talked about that. That was way before the February 24th special military operation, the whole Ukraine thing. Now we have, just last week, well, we've had more sanctions in the interim, but just last week we've had the European Union come out and say that what is their number one priority? What did Vander Crazy say was her number one priority? Moving away from China.
Yes.
That's what she said, moving away from China, not being dependent on China, resources, on their manufacturing, none of it. We have to move Europe away from China. I mean, China understands where this is heading. It seems that the US, the Biden White House, and the EU, they're just copying and pasting everything they did with Russia. They're just, doing the same with China. So they know where they want to take this as well. We're heading in this direction. It's crystal clear.
Absolutely. No question at all. And I would add to the list of things that you said. I mean, the microchip war, the fact that the United States is now trying to prevent China obtaining advanced microchips in order essentially to prevent China developing more advanced AI systems, moving to 5G technologies, all those kind of things, which is extraordinary, actually. I mean, trying to prevent the economic development of a country, that's not something that Donald Trump ever went to. I mean, Donald Trump's idea, and you're absolutely correct, and it's important people, we repeat this. When he became president, he understood something which was absolutely the case. China had taken massive advantage of the US's open door. This has caused huge damage to the US's industrial base. It had lost US jobs. It had weakened the economic fabric of the United States. And Trump wanted to stop that. And he made that very clear to the Chinese. And the Chinese obviously weren't happy about it, but they understood it. They're tough-minded, practical people. They understood that, Trump calling a stop sooner or later, probably they thought it was bound to happen. We've had this very, very good run, probably for much longer than we expected. We got all our friends in the Clinton administration and the Obama administration, and they threw open all the doors, and many of them made very great deals.
Biden administration.
Exactly. They made all that money with us, and it was all very nice for us. But, ultimately, it wasn't going to go on forever. Sooner or later, there was going to be a pushback from the US. So we've developed our economy now to a very high level. Trump comes along, he says enough, we're tough negotiators, we'll negotiate toughly with him, but we understand where he's coming from. We can live with this. In fact, once this divorce happens, this economic divorce happens, we can all each go our separate ways, but there's no reason at all why there should be that smash. And then, of course, what happens is that Trump runs into political difficulties in the United States, which we've talked about many times. He is somehow persuaded to take Pompeo and Bolton on. They give a completely different dimension, go far beyond what Trump, who's heavily distracted by Russiagate and every other crisis that we can think of, the coup, you name it. Anyway, they go far beyond what was Trump's original plan. And then we get the Biden administration coming in, the administration of neocons. This is the purest neocon administration we have had in the United States up to this point. And they're obviously and openly now seeking a confrontation with China. And they're trying to pressure China economically with all these sanctions. They've put, as you said, China on the sanctions escalator. They're trying to stop China's development of advanced technology. A hopeless idea, by the way, but that's what they want to do. And of course, they are repeatedly, and I get to use the word, lying to China over Taiwan, which is something which the Chinese are getting very, very angry about. So on the one hand, you have Biden comes along, tells Xi Jinping, we adhere to the one China policy. And at the same time, they are deliberately trying to goad China by building up Taiwan, sending arms there, sending the Speaker of the House of Representatives there, doing everything they can to inflame a situation which up to very recently had been stable. And as you rightly say, the Chinese can see all of this. They can see that the European Union, much to their own incredulity, by the way, but they see that the European Union is willingly following where the neocons in Washington are leading. If you read the Chinese media, they are astonished that the Europeans should be committing economic harakiri a second time. I mean, with the oil and the gas, that was bad enough. And now they're intent on doing it all over again, it seems. But, they see all of that. They can see where it's all going. So inevitably and unavoidably, they are responding themselves. So they're consolidating around their leader, Xi Jinping. They're taking steps to safeguard economic stability in their own country, and that does mean a more statist approach. And of course, they're now boosting their military, and they're strengthening their ties with Russia.
Yeah. And to me, that reinforces something that we've also talked about when the special military operation started, which is that the Chinese realize that they need to have Russia's back in this, because if Russia were to lose, well, then they would be very much exposed. They would be next, and they would be very much exposed.
Exactly.
So I think that reinforces the fact that that China will not let Russia lose in this conflict. I mean, Russia understands the stakes.
Yeah.
China understands the stakes. So
absolutely, and I think that's become absolutely clear. I mean, on the one hand, they want to preserve a certain distance from the Russians because it's important that in order to build relations with other countries that they do. But ultimately, I mean, they understand that they have to have Russia at their back. So if Russia runs out of microchips, which by the way I don't believe, but anyway, if Russia does, China will send microchips. It's contrary to what some people say. I believe it's the biggest microchip producer, and they're certainly capable eventually of building their own high-end microchips. No one should be in any doubt about that. I know people talk otherwise. They talk about, the Dutch being ahead in lithography, and this is somehow important for making microchips. Any idea that the Chinese and the Russians can't sort out these technologies is delusional. That's the first thing to say. But they will make sure that the Russians have their microchips. If need be, they will build quietly, whatever weapon system the Russians need. They will quietly send money if they have to. I mean, they probably don't need to do very much, actually. But critically, they will provide diplomatic support. They will import Russian oil. They will import Russian gas. They will do all of these things, which, of course, strengthens Russia, but also strengthens themselves.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Any final thoughts on this
Well, I mean,
story?
this is not how it needed to be. I mean, I understand people have strong
Yeah.
feelings about Russia, China, particularly in the United States, and I understand why. I mean, I think Trump understood those feelings. His original policies were well calibrated to American interests. What the current administration is doing is not well calibrated to American interests. If we have a smash with China in the South China Sea and in the Taiwan Straits, it is not going to be good for the United States. That's all I'm going to say about this. Again, the neocons are miscalculating, and they're miscalculating disastrously.
Yeah. I think the main point, the main takeaway from this video is that the Biden White House is without a doubt the neocon White House.
Absolutely.
When it
Completely
comes to
so.
foreign policy, it is the
Yes.
neocon White House. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
completely controlled. All right. We'll leave it there. The Duran.locals.com. Look for us on Rockfin as well. I will have a link down below. And the Duran shop, 10% off. Use the code. Good day. Take care.